Hello everyone, my name is Henry Harrod. I am the co-founder and CEO of Fourier Audio, and so it was, kind of late 2020. It was at Southampton University, it was mid-COVID, and I was studying at the ISVR in a Masters in Acoustical Engineering, and I got an email through from the Future Worlds team, Grace in fact is here, and kind of mentioned the existence of Future Worlds, and at the time we were talking, the three of us, the three co-founders of Fourier Audio, about starting a business, and there were various crazy crackpot ideas, but the kind of vague premise was that we wanted to disrupt the audio technology sector, especially in the live domain. So I used to be a theatre sound engineer, I used to work in the West End in London and beyond, and the other co-founders, Gareth Owen, was my boss at the time. He's a kind of very decorated live sound engineer and sound designer for the West End and Broadway. And then Pete, my friend from Imperial College London, a very talented engineer, came together in that time that we had during COVID to dream about the live audio sector. And through that and through the journey with Future Worlds, we developed Fourier Audio. And in a nutshell, the product that we're coming to market still at the moment with is a product called Fourier Transform Engine. And the Transform Engine enables sound engineers to use studio plugins, so software that's used in recording studio environments on live productions. And so customers we're working with at the moment are, say, Coldplay, Muse, many of the biggest acts in the world. And so I was asked to come here today just to talk a little bit about my journey, and I kind of was asked initially just to kick off with some lessons I learned. So if you would entertain me, just kind of rattle down my list, and then hopefully we can have some questions off the back of that. And so kind of was asked, what were the kind of, say, 5 things that through that journey I've discovered? And the first one that I reflected on, I think obviously the title of the thing suggests, we've now been acquired, and I can come on and talk about that in a bit. But in that arc from starting a company to leading to acquisition, reflecting on that, one of the biggest things I learned is you need to try to deep down understand what you personally want from the journey. What is it that gets you into being a startup founder? Because it's a crazy idea. It's quite frankly a bit mad to go into it. But yet we do it, and everyone in here has a connection with the entrepreneurial market and being an entrepreneur in one way, shape or form. And certainly looking back, what I wanted to change my career. I wanted to change from being a sound engineer to being in the startup space. And that was my anchor throughout that whole journey. So one of the key things is to remember what you personally want, not necessarily what your co-founders want. Collectively, you can discuss that. But it's your job as a human being, as an individual and as an entrepreneur to understand exactly what you want from the journey and hold on to that for dear life, because it will help you when the decisions get really tough. Another thing that you hear the term imposter syndrome time and time again, and obviously here I am talking to you, whereas 3 years ago I was sat where you guys are, albeit on a webcam. And you look back at that, and the imposter syndrome throughout the journey has been crazy, at times crippling. But over time it has got better, and there's been kind of various things along that journey and kind of clear things that help it. And the biggest one, and this is going to sound like a blind advert for Future Worlds, is the connections that you make through schemes like Future Worlds. I also was privileged to be supported by the Royal Academy of Engineering with an enterprise fellowship. And those connections and that support from institutions and the individuals within them and connected to them, without doubt, is the best tonic for imposter syndrome. And that's why I've come back. It's why I want to give back as much as I possibly can, because by being here, by connecting with people, by speaking to people, that's how you'll tackle that imposter syndrome as you go along your journey. And in that journey, albeit surrounded by imposter syndrome, one of the hardest things to do is understanding when to celebrate. Like, when have you actually won? Because it's very easy to be head down, charge, do the thing, one foot in front of the other. You set yourself goals, say, along the way, or in fact, quite often you don't even know what your goals are or where you're going. And it's very hard to know when to celebrate. And I think one of the key things that I've learned along the way, in fact, Pete, the co-founder, he gave me a book by Jack Welch very early on called Winning. It's a great book, highly recommend it. And the simple premise is make sure you win. Make sure when you win that you celebrate it. You celebrate deeply. You really celebrate hard. Really, really desperately difficult to do. I first put my hand up and say I'm terrible at it. But along the way, we've done our level best to make sure we celebrate the successes along the journey. I'm more than happy to talk about that as well. Now, one thing that I look back on, and certainly here we are at the moment, bringing a product to market literally right now, it's in beta test, going to market and generating revenue. One of the things that I've learned along the journey is the clear detachment between fundraising success and business success. And as an entrepreneur and as a business person, starting a company that's there to generate bluntly a profit, it is your responsibility as a founder, as an employee of that business, to make money for the company, right? It's there to drive a profit. And I think it's all too easy to come into this, and we did this without a shadow of a doubt, came into it with what was a good idea. We had a really strong vision and a great team, which is crucial, but actually being fixated on what is a good business, what drives a clear profit that's going to build a solid foundation to build your company, to employ more people and actually grow it sustainably, is one of those key things that we didn't have clear enough sight of when we were starting out. Now, we're much better at that now, in part supported by the company that's acquired us, but also in going through the journey we've been through, we've become far more fixated on the side of the business and building a healthy, sustainable business, rather than just unbounded growth and selling a premise, selling a vision. Now, that can get you so far, and indeed it got us a very long way. But I would strongly encourage you to really become fixated on the business that you're trying to build, because you don't necessarily need to fundraise your way into starting a startup. You really can start and bootstrap your way through to being an incredibly successful business. And the kind of final reflection that's slightly detached is around the notion of NDAs. I'm sure we're all familiar with that three-letter acronym. It's a terrible acronym. It's really irritating. I still deal with NDAs on a daily basis, and at times they are and very much do have their place. But as a founder sat in this room, let's say you are here, you've got an idea, you want to start a company, you probably may or may not have a co-founding team, but you do have an idea. Your instincts will be, oh, I can't tell anyone. You can sign my NDA, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. Please just tell people what you're doing, talk to people, share what your plans are, share why you want to do it with investors, with potential other co-founders, employees, whoever it might be, because realistically, if the idea is worth pursuing, you are going to be the best person to do it. If you're not, really you're setting yourself up to fail in a way. Now, that's not to say that you're the only person to do it, but really making sure that you connect with other people about what you're doing it and why you're doing it without the need for paperwork and signing on the dotted line, it's just going to slow you down. So I just strongly recommend you to really be passionate and just share it with anyone who will listen, because you'll find that really that's the best jet fuel for your journey. So yeah, those are my wafflings anyway, so there's my reflections for you. But yeah, very much here to answer questions. I've met various of you in this room over my journey, so obviously know lots of familiar faces. So separately aside, thank you for supporting me. Yeah, it's a good one, and obviously it comes back to that winning as well. Identifying what success is very difficult and is subjective, obviously. I think the key thing that's happened in the last, say, 3 or 4 years is we've gone from a world which is very fixated on growth and selling vision. You know, goodness, 5 years ago, the most successful and biggest companies in the world weren't in any way, their success didn't seem to be attached to their profit-making ability, right? It was, look at Uber or any of the big companies out there, especially over on the west coast of America, and a lot of them are fixated on growth at any costs, you know, irrelevant to the fact that they're actually there to drive a profit and build a healthy business. And now the world is changing. In my opinion, for the better. We need to be here as business people to actually build a sustainable business that's there for the long run. It's not there as a kind of snatch and grab. It's not there to just drive quick, hard growth and then drive for the exit for the reason of just making a lot of money and then seeing a nosedive after that. And I think one of the lessons that I learned along the journey, you know, coming into this, you see, what are the big companies? They're driving on growth, therefore I need to go and fundraise at any cost. And I got sucked into that without a shadow of a doubt. And don't get me wrong, I think one of the lessons I did learn along that is just because you choose the wrong path, in my opinion, it doesn't mean you can't come backwards. You know, here we are, having been acquired and now developing into a very clear business proposal. And I think the journey that I've been on there is just because you choose the wrong way doesn't necessarily mean that you can't pivot around it. So, you know, don't get me wrong, for some companies, you know, biotech, there's certainly industries where you need to fundraise to actually get anywhere. But there's also, in our case, say, you absolutely could have gone different directions, and that's all just hindsight. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to that validating the business idea and the business case, and you hear about mythical product market fit, right? You know, is your product actually going to sell to people? And getting there as quickly as you can. In part, I think we actually did that quite well with our first product. It just turned out that no one really wanted to buy it, so that was kind of unfortunate. But so we were at least quite good at going down the road and realizing, oh no, that's not the one, and pivoting around. So I think in part we've kind of learnt that. But what's the thing that it's a hard question. I think that having faith that you are going to grow into it, like having faith that if you want it, and if it's so cliche, isn't it? But if you want to get into it enough, if you're passionate enough to have that journey and holding on to what you want, just trust that. Because there were times in the journey where I completely lost sight of it, and I was like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. And I think the power of hindsight is that actually that journey is incredibly powerful, because it gives you a confidence that I would never have had otherwise without that journey. So I guess just trusting in the journey, and if you put enough energy in and network and surround yourself with people that care about you enough, you will succeed. And it's what Irene said. It's very little to lose, very, very little to lose. So I came here to study a master's. In terms of understanding your journey through it, I think, again, it comes down to, I guess to explain what happened, one of our early investors phoned me up while I was writing up my dissertation and explained, look, we had the premise, we had the framework of an investment round in place, and the investors were ready to go, but they weren't happy to commit unless Pete, the co-founder, was working full-time, but I was not, and they wanted me to come in full-time to the business. And it was a very clear decision to make. It was one of, are we going to bet the house on this project? And so I wouldn't necessarily, not everyone's going to have that decision to make, but it was one that I took very seriously, and I clearly bet on it along with the rest of the team. And certainly from that day onwards, I'm still an employee of Fourier Audio. So it was a very clear decision to make, but the collateral was that I didn't finish my dissertation and have a postgraduate diploma, not a master's. So it's, So again, it's not something that every business necessarily goes through. Companies can start and continue ad infinitum, right? But one of the decisions a company has to make is, well, what's the future? Like, what does the future look like for the business as an entity? And one of those outcomes can be that another business or collection of people, but typically a business, looks to take control of the business and then own that business instead of the people that owned it before. And so in our case, we had a team of investors and advisors, but people that were connected to the business through share ownership, and obviously the founders and some of the employees. And in that journey, to kind of combine the two, we started a conversation with the company that went on to acquire us, Audiotonics, which are certainly one of the largest live audio technology businesses in the world, based in the UK, a great British success story. And we were talking with them about the prospects of raising further funding. We'd done a pre-seed round, but we were looking to go on that journey for further seed funding, etc. And that conversation carried on, and we were talking about seed fundraising and bringing them into the round. And the conversation quickly became apparent that actually, in terms of finding a home for Fourier in the longer term, there was an option to base ourselves within that group. Audiotonics as a group, it's not going to be a sales pitch, but their ethos is to bring a company into the group and support it as an individual brand, keep the brand, grow the company. And for us, it got to the point where we had a decision to make. Did we want to go on a fundraising journey, or indeed business growth through revenue growth? Or did we want to join this group that was the natural fit for us? And we got to a point where everything aligned, both the financial terms of the deal, but also the cultural alignment was there. And that led to us selling our ownership of Fourier Audio to Audiotonics, and that was what the acquisition entailed. And there's a conversation that happened. It was actually a bit spooky. It was before, I asked the founders on one of the calls, like, what do they want? And you kind of mentioned the term exit, and I think some people are quite scared of talking about the long term, because you're like, why are you in it? And again, it comes back to, why was I in it? I wasn't in it for the acquisition. I was in it to have a career change and learn new skills and meet new people and go on a journey as an entrepreneur. And if that led to acquisition, then great. But if it didn't, then so be it. That was fine too. And so that was my engine, so to say. But one of the outcomes that was going to satisfy that in a kind of relatively finite way was an acquisition. So for me, it ticked that box, and that led to me emotionally feeling comfortable with an exit. And similarly with the other guys, it was ultimately came down to the point of, you have different options to make. It wasn't our only option. We had different choices. And I think that's one of the key things with an acquisition. You don't, hostile acquisition is one thing, right? This was not one of those. But you can be in a situation, a business where it is a hostile takeover. A business runs out of money or runs out of runway, and unfortunately that can lead to an acquisition in a slightly less happy environment. But in our case, we had the privilege of choice, and I guess that was, we had different options on the table, and we had this opportunity to join this cultural group and alignment that led to us doing it. I guess belief in yourself that you can do different things, like you can learn stuff. I've always been a learner. I've loved learning, but I think I didn't necessarily believe that I could go on that journey, and neither did I necessarily plan on. As I say, I didn't plan to go on the journey towards an acquisition. That wasn't my plan. So yeah, I think the biggest hurdle for me, imposter syndrome, for want of a better term, like coming into it, I didn't believe that I could necessarily get all the way through that journey and come here and talk to you today. That wasn't necessarily something I believed in at the beginning of the journey. Neither did I think I would ever have it in me. And so along that journey, there've been some incredibly dark moments where you kind of wake up one day and you go, what on earth am I doing? Like we're running out of money, and goodness, the number of times we nearly ran out of money is just ridiculous. And you kind of have to pick yourself up, and that monotony and that repetition of picking yourself up in the face of really quite difficult challenges, both politically with different people, your co-founding team, or the company as a whole, investors, advisors. My goodness, obviously advisors are amazing, but they all say different things as well. So you're trying to pick your way through, and you're trying to navigate your way through this chaos. And a lot of the time, I wish I could stand here and say, oh, every day I loved it. I didn't, absolutely. Like days of it where it was terrible. But also there are some amazing highs, and obviously the acquisition is one of them. But along the journey, like there are some amazing wins that you'll find, and that comes back to that celebrating. Make sure that when you have those amazing moments where you say stood here today, this is an amazing moment for me as well, right? It's amazing to come and share my story. But similarly, I've listened to other people's. I've met some people that I never thought I'd met. Princess Anne, for example, who told me my business was a terrible idea. She said it would never work, and she didn't quite know why she was talking. I didn't know why I was talking to her, but we met briefly. I've been to silly dinners. I've met silly people. It's been crazy. You couldn't ever foresee where it's going to go, and that's both a hurdle and also one of the joys. So I think that insecurity is something that I've learnt to live with. But initially it was crippling, absolutely crippling. Goodness. I think there was a moment where we were on a call. In fact, actually, it was, we were in San Francisco, and Pete, the other co-founder, was away, and there were a couple of the team working with the company, and the company was looking after itself to some degree. And me and Pete were away traveling, albeit working, but not connected to the day-to-day. And having that realization that we've generated employment for people. And I like to think that people, and so I'm told, people like working with us and for us. And so that's a huge privilege to me. It's something I didn't ever see coming. It wasn't necessarily one of the reasons I got into it was to employ people, but it's been massively rewarding working with other people that want to work with you and that you can provide employment for. And it often doesn't feel like we're kind of all working for a business, right? It feels like you're having fun. I like to think we do have a laugh quite a lot of the time. And so I think that's been the most surprise. I guess it's kind of obvious in a way looking in, but along the journey, it surprised me so often that you have these moments where you're like, oh, we're working and we're having a huge amount of fun. So it's,
Win-win, absolutely.
And there's hard times as well, don't get me wrong. We have some bad days too. But I'd be the first to put my hand up and say that Pete, the other co-founder, he taught me a lot about building a team. He's very naturally good at that. So I wouldn't want to take his words and show them as my own, but certainly we as a company led by Pete on growing the engineering side of the business, I think it's having a real determination to wanting true excellence. And there's been, in the face of running out of runway, running out of energy, not being able to build product because you're recruiting, like we have lost months to recruitment, a ridiculous amount of time. But the outcome has been a team that wants to be there, and the talent that we have across our team is just second to none. So we've come across moments where the technology isn't working, or the product's not doing what it's meant to, or it needs to do something. And the confidence that I have, just having gone on that journey with Pete to build that engineering team, it's amazing. And so how do we do that? I think one of the things Peter does is that excellence and that real driven recruitment process. Our recruitment process is 4 stages long. It's actually on our website quite a lot of the time. If you do email me if you want to know how it works, but it is multi-stage, and one of the stages is where you meet the rest of the team. And we're very culturally driven, and we've kindly declined to recruit people who passed every engineering step, brilliant engineers, but it just didn't match with the team. And we're very proud of the fact that our team are very diverse, but also we're all together. We believe in it together, and we like to have a good laugh as well. Goodness, when was it? It was probably 2022 or 2021 actually, maybe. I joined Southampton on the San Francisco trip, which in and of itself obviously is amazing to go out there to meet the various people, some of which I've stayed in contact to this day. And the kind of key thing it gave me, well, there's 2 things. One was meeting different people. We met people through the UK government, we met lawyers, we met other startup founders that I've stayed in touch with, and that just the passion they have on that side of the world is just different. It's electric over there. And I definitely I've become far more fueled to bring a little bit of that back to the UK, and I continue to try to do that as much as I can. But on a more personal basis, I actually met up with a friend of Gareth's and someone who's supported us along the journey, Sheldon Radford, while we were over there. And that was actually a conversation that then led to meeting, and you know how you draw those threads of networking, but that kind of out of the blue connection to sit down with Sheldon actually led to us meeting the company that acquired us. And so I look back and I draw the line of the importance of that trip. When deciding to go out there, it's not cheap. I joined it on our own back because we weren't part of the cohort at the time. But we took a bit of a punt. We knew it was going to be valuable meeting people with Future Worlds. And that journey of meeting all of those people and then also meeting Sheldon that led to that, the value was just extraordinary. And I guess that shows you don't necessarily need to know why you're doing something. You can just do something for the sake of it in the knowledge that it may well lead to something extraordinary. The value it delivers, I would say, to the founders, and myself certainly, the confidence it gave was one of the most formative things on my journey. It comes back to that NDA thing as well. It's where I picked up that so acutely is that everywhere you'll stand in a drinks event or something, talking to people, and they'll tell you the 3 businesses they're making straight up the bat, and they're big companies. They're being founded by really formative people over in that part of the world, and they're just freely telling you. And I was just like, why are you telling me this? Surely it's secret. Don't tell anyone. And I look back at that, and that place runs on that kind of jet fuel of just sharing ideas, because you never know when you might meet your co-founder. You might meet an investor. You might meet someone who can help you on your journey. And that was a key moment. That's probably where that bit of reflection came from, was probably that San Francisco trip. What surprised me the most?
Yeah.
Ooh. Goodness. I think it was just, I look back at before I came to South, because I guess mine was a bit different, because I was a master's student. So I'd already I was in a career path. And just the abrupt change of the quality of life that I had, I suddenly found myself, I loved my job before. I worked on a myriad of different shows. It was great, but that theatre lifestyle, it's all in the evening. I didn't really have a connection to general society a lot of the time, because you are just working in the evening, so you don't have the same lifestyle. And I think the thing that delighted me and surprised me the most was that my thesis of wanting to change career seemed to catch quite quickly. I quite quickly realised, in the face of something that was so challenging, and it was so much more challenging than my job was before, and yet I felt so much more fulfilled. And so it was that feeling of oh, actually, maybe my theory's right. And so you stab around, and I think I've had 3 or 4 random careers. I was a theatre producer for a bit. I'm a bit of an oddball, really. But none of them ever really stuck until that moment when you came out of university, just raised some money, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. The stuff that I was reading everything. I had no idea what a balance sheet was. I knew nothing, and that's okay. And you can learn stuff as you go. And I think that whole moment of realizing, you can learn all of it, as you don't have to do an MBA. You can just do it. It's pretty cool. And you don't really know it's coming until you're doing it, and you're like, oh, I can keep doing it, and here I am still. So in theatre, principally my job was what's known as a sound number 2 or a sound number 3. So I was mainly fitting radio mics onto people, which sounds and is relatively dull. But what it means that you do is you meet so many people, like so many people. And so I quite quickly identified through my early bits of my career, I also worked at Apple for a bit on the shop floor. I loved meeting people and understanding people and trying to figure out how to work with people, how to get the best out of people. And I quite quickly identified through theatre that my love for working with people, even really challenging people. Like I would meet someone who, you can imagine that industry, it's tough sometimes. I've worked with some very difficult people and some amazing people and a whole spectrum. But there was never a moment where I didn't enjoy it, if that makes sense. I could be working with someone really tricky, and in that process I loved understanding how to get the best out of the interaction, how ultimately to get what was right for the team. And it sounds so simple, you're fitting a radio mic, but my goodness, the stories, the war stories on that journey, you can only imagine the craziness. So, theatre in particular, linking to sound, yeah, there's a link there, but for me it was far more about the love and understanding of people that ultimately leads me to do what I do today, because I get to work with so many more people around the world, and it's just such a privilege. So a lot of the investment journey, again, we did pre-seed and then were acquired. It's a bit odd. So I wouldn't want to stand on a soapbox and say how it should be, but certainly my understanding and our journey and knowing other founders' journeys, a lot of the fundraising journey and arc, it's all about demonstrating and committing to people investing in you what you're going to do in terms of deliverable milestones. Like when you've raised your pre-seed money, what are you going to do with that money? Not how are you going to spend. Like I see decks come through my email where it's like, oh, I'm going to spend 50 grand on people. And that's very nice. But ultimately what I'm interested in, and I think what most investors are interested in, is what's this collective money going to achieve for the business, so as to demonstrate commitment again that you're going to raise more money or hit revenue and become cash flow positive and not need to raise more money, for example. And so I think the question's great in and of itself, in that, yes, you need to validate your product as soon as humanly possible. We raised an early bit of money with a thesis of a product called Rewind, and the money was there to validate Rewind in the market and also begin development of our next product. And quite quickly we realised that the Rewind product wasn't going to catch. So it's okay if that fails, I guess is my point. Like here we are having succeeded, and just don't be scared of validating and it not working. Just be sure to really quickly pick yourself up and crack on and have a plan B as well, or have a future product or have a future theory that means you can pivot into something else. So, but crucially with that investor, don't be afraid when things are going wrong. Like there were moments, instinctively, you just want to crawl into a corner and stop. Because when it's not going well, you just don't want to tell anyone, especially your investors, because they've backed you, right? They've backed the vision, they've backed you, it's so personal, but actually they've backed you for a reason, and they've backed you to do the right thing for the company, not necessarily just the product. They've backed you at such an early stage. Odds that you've got the right product and the market fit in the right place and the right time to the right people, odds are as good as zero. It's all about how you pivot around and find that perfect market fit to then go into overdrive. I would highly praise Future Worlds for genuinely doing good work on this. And I think the fact that you're here and with a team here that's so supportive of you as an individual, whatever your background, whatever your beliefs, whatever it might be, to really get you to succeed with nothing really in return. Like it's there for you to take, it's there for you to run with. And I've been so privileged to meet people across such a broad spectrum in my time as an entrepreneur, and I do have faith that it's getting better. We need to do a hell of a lot more in various angles, and I'm perfectly acutely aware I stand here as a white man. Like there's a lot to be done. But places like this, Future Worlds and incubators and the network of people that come with it, you are in the best place. And so just have confidence in yourself to get out there and start taking those baby steps, because you'll find that people suddenly start running alongside you, and it's very surreal when everyone believes in you, and they will. People will believe in you because you're here to get into it. You believe in yourself enough to be sat here on your Thursday evening. That's a great start. And so just back yourself and let people run with you and support you, and know that people want you to win, whatever your background. Good. That gut trusting is a hard thing to answer. And I'd be disingenuous if I say, look, there are moments when I think having a few core beliefs and why you do, what you want, and ultimately what you think is right is a really good place to start. Because there were times where I received advice that was objectively good, and indeed, here I stand saying build a strong business, but that doesn't necessarily mean if someone needs something, or if you need to support an employee or whatever it might be, you can still do that in the face of driving profit, right? It's still possible to do both. You don't just have to drive profit at all costs. You can also support people, look after people, take them on the journey with you. And so definitely I had advice that was quite cold and I guess proper advice in the eyes of business. If you sat down and did an MBA, that's how you're told to do it. And having an authenticity as how you want things to go and believing in yourself to go, actually, that's great, and it's good advice, and acknowledging it as such, because it probably is. It's rare you get objectively bad advice, but I think understanding that you can say thank you but no thank you because of X, Y, Z. Now, you might be wrong, and indeed you probably will be at times, but learning from those mistakes is obviously a big part of it. But yeah, I would say having an authenticity and having some fundamental beliefs, diversity is a great example, but understanding how you want to support people, why you do it, and how you want to be seen and perceived is really important. So I guess authenticity is the best thing you have there. Yeah, and a good example, we closed an acquisition, right? Yeah, objectively a success, for everyone, the acquirer and the company, everyone, it was a success. And yet, I think it was 6 months before we had a party to celebrate it with everyone. It was like really bad, like 6 months. Because the race, it's a bit too much detail, but we were racing to meet a demo day inside the acquiring company to meet the global distribution network, which was happening the following Monday. So we completed on the deal at, I think, 9 p.m. on the Friday, and then we had the weekend to turn around a demo pitch for the global distribution network. Craziness. And so then immediately off we went into the merry journey, and we barely had time to celebrate. And I think, what would I say? I think really, really holding yourself to it, asking other people to hold you to it. I like to think the team around me are quite good at holding me and us to it. We talk about it quite a lot. So I'd say we're quite good at talking about it. We're not quite yet good enough at actually doing the celebrating, but we're getting better. I don't know. You hear about it with acquisition, and I think without doubt, once you've been through an acquisition, that the kind of energy to get over the hump is it's work level like I didn't even know existed. It's an astonishingly complex, difficult, challenging thing to do. And so I'm a big believer in after that sort of event, you need to just take a step back. And I was away for 3 weeks on holiday the last 3 weeks. So I've just come back from that. And I think I'm on a journey of just wanting to decompress a little bit and really enjoy what we've built and bring this product to market. So in the short and medium term, very much kind of focused on where this product's going. The people we're getting to work with, for example, we sent one of our units out with Fred again the other day, and we found out it was in the Sydney Opera House. And we're finding the most extraordinary fulfillment at the moment from what turned out to be a Zoom call in COVID to now in the audio sector being one of the hottest things going. And so it's so humbling to be in that position, and I'm just really doing my best to enjoy that bit, because I think it would be all too easy to not enjoy it. And that's the payoff to something. It's very hard work still, but trying to enjoy that. Long term, I really don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to figure that out at the moment. I think you get a bit rudderless after an acquisition for that reason. And I guess just stay tuned. I don't know is the honest answer.